My girlfriend said, "I told everyone you cheated so they'd hate you." I didn't defend myself. I posted one screenshot instead. The messages changed fast. At 31, I was a man working as a safety coordinator in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My girlfriend Sabrina Cole was 26, and we'd been together for 21 months. Both names were on a lease, a $2,900 deposit, and a $1,250 break fee. After she tried to push me out and rewrite the story, I chose myself. Walker's Point was where my life finally felt steady. I ran the same loop past Kinnickinnick Avenue, then grabbed a bagel. I liked predictable things, clean floors at work, rent paid early, the same sunrise over the river. My job at Iron Bridge Fulfillment wasn't glamorous. It was steel toes, checklists, and calm voices. I carried two things everywhere without thinking: a dented stainless thermos and a blue key fob on a braided strap. The thermos kept coffee hot through long inspections. The key fob opened our building's lobby door. Sabrina liked the loft because it looked grown up. Concrete floors, tall windows, and a rooftop with string lights. We shared a couch, a bed, and a kitchen table. We also shared a hard truth called paperwork. I was the one who tracked bills. That was my flaw, too. I waited too long to talk about money. I told myself love would cover the gaps. Our friends met at places like Copper Finch Roasters in Bayview. We laughed at dumb stories and argued about sandwiches. Nina was the one friend who checked on everyone. She never let awkwardness sit untouched. Sabrina liked that Nina listened. I liked that Nina asked follow-up questions. Most nights, Sabrina worked late at her salon. I cooked simple meals and packed my lunch. Rent was $1,780 a month. I paid $1,200 and Sabrina paid $580. I did not mind paying more. I minded being treated like I owed apologies. The first crack showed up as a job offer. It arrived on a quiet morning at my desk. A recruiter from Cascade Safe Logistics called me. She said they needed someone to rebuild their safety program. The role was in Portland, Oregon. The pay was $124K plus a 10% bonus target. Benefits were better too. $401K match at 7% and a relocation package up to $8,500. I stepped outside the warehouse to take a breath. My thermos warmed my hand in the cold air. I came home excited and careful. I tried to explain it like a plan, not a demand. Sabrina sat on the couch, scrolling. She barely looked up. She said, "Portland is a phase." I said, "It's a real step up." She smirked like I was pretending to be important. She said, "You'll be a clipboard king." That stung more than it should have. I had worked hard for that call. I said, "We can talk about options." She said, "Your options are staying or leaving alone." Her tone turned sharp when I pushed back. She said, "You're chasing attention, not a career." I didn't yell. I went to the kitchen and rinsed my thermos. The next week, she started acting like the loft belonged to her. She moved my shoes to the hallway closet. She also started needing space in weird ways. Not a conversation, more like orders. One evening near South Shore Park, she walked ahead of me. Her shoulders were tight like she wore anger. She said, "You should sleep somewhere else sometimes." I said, "We live together." She stopped and turned on me. She said, "You make this place feel monitored." I touched the blue key fob in my pocket. It was just a plastic chip, not a leash. I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You always know when I come and go." I blinked, confused. I said, "You tell me your schedule." She rolled her eyes. She said, "Sure, that's the only way." That night, I sent her a calm email. I needed a record of what was happening. The subject line mattered later more than I expected. It read, "Home boundaries and schedule clarity." Sabrina replied with one sentence. She said, "Stop writing like my supervisor." 2 days later, Nina called me from Brady Street. I could hear people and music behind her. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." "Why?" Nina hesitated. She said, "Sabrina says you've been controlling." My stomach dropped, then steadied. I kept my voice flat. I said, "Controlling how?" She said, "You track her." I stared at the blue key fob on the counter. It looked innocent and stupid. I said, "That's not true." Nina said, "I didn't think it fit you." Sabrina didn't stop at one person. The next weekend, people started avoiding me. Someone canceled a dinner at Riverwalk Commons. Someone else ignored my texts completely. At work, I kept it together. I walked my rounds and checked the same stations. My supervisor pulled me aside near the loading bays. He didn't use a name, which made it worse. He said, "Personal drama can't bleed into work." I said, "It won't." I took my lunch outside alone. I drank from my dented thermos and tried not to shake. That night, Sabrina came home humming. She acted light, like nothing was wrong. I stood near the kitchen island. I kept my hands visible. I said, "You told people I track you," she said. "They asked," I answered. I said, "Why would you say that?" She said, "Because it's how it feels." I asked one clear question. I said, "Do you want me off the lease?" Sabrina didn't flinch. She said, "I want the loft to be peaceful." I said, "Peace isn't erasing me." She said, "Then don't make it hard." The next morning, I found an email in my inbox. It was from Harbor Line Lofts Management. I recognized the building manager's name. Mr. Patel was polite and direct. The subject line hit like a slap. It read, "Request to remove co-tenant." Mr. Patel wrote that Sabrina requested a lease change. He asked for both signatures to proceed. Sabrina had moved fast. She also got sloppy. I replied right away, calm and short. I wrote, "I do not consent to removal." Then I started documenting everything, not to punish her but to protect myself. I created a folder on my laptop. Every important email got saved as a PDF. I printed the key fob policy from our lease packet. I kept it beside my thermos at the table. I also kept a simple log of where I was. Gym, work, grocery store, home. I did not confront our friends. I did not post rants or call anyone names. I just stopped speaking off the record. If it mattered, it went into an email. Sabrina hated that shift. She loved arguments she could retell. She tried to bait me in the hallway one night. She blocked the door with her body. She said, "Stop acting like a victim." I said, "Move, please." She scoffed. She said, "You're such a control hobbyist." That insult was new and it stung. I walked past her without touching her. The next day, I toured a studio across town. It was near the historic Third Ward. The leasing agent quoted numbers like a math quiz. $13.50 rent, $350 deposit, $75 application fee. I took a brochure and thanked her. My blue key fob felt heavy in my pocket. I wasn't planning to run away. I was planning to exit clean. That evening, I checked my bank app. Rent payments showed clear memo lines. I had always used the same memo text. Harbor Line Lofts rent. Sabrina called me cheap once for that habit. Now it looked like a lifeline. I pulled the last 9 months of statements. Each payment had the memo line, consistent and dated. I also found something else. A payment I didn't recognize from our joint account. It was $640 with the memo deposit hold. I hadn't made it. I asked Sabrina about it over dinner. She didn't look up from her phone. I said, "What is the $640 transfer?" She said, "Don't interrogate me." I said, "It's our money." She said, "It's my backup plan." That was motive number 1. She wanted a cushion without discussion. Motive number 2 arrived a week later. I heard it from Mr. Patel accidentally. I went to the leasing office on Water Street. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner. Mr. Patel offered me a chair. His tone stayed professional. He said, "Sabrina mentioned a roommate replacement." I said, "A replacement for who?" Mr. Patel looked surprised. He said, "She said you were relocating immediately." I kept my expression neutral. I said, "I haven't moved. I haven't agreed." Mr. Patel nodded slowly. He said, "Lease rules require written approval." I said, "Please keep everything by email." He said, "Of course." On the way out, I sipped my coffee from the thermos. My hands stopped shaking. Back home, I emailed Sabrina. I used a subject line I could find later. It read, "Lease status and co-tenant consent." I asked her to stop making requests without me. Her reply came fast. She said, "You're being dramatic." I didn't argue. I called a tenant attorney the next morning. Erica Wallace met me near Cathedral Square. Her office was small and bright. She didn't ask for gossip. She asked for documents. I slid printed bank statements across her desk. The memo lines were clear and repetitive. I showed her the email from Mr. Patel. The subject line was still visible at the top. Erica tapped the page with a pen. She said, "This is about leverage." I said, "I want to leave without being ruined." She said, "Then we do this quietly and correctly." Erica drafted a letter that set boundaries. No lease changes without mutual consent, no false statements to third parties, no interference with my property. She also drafted a retraction request, not a threat, just a formal demand to stop repeating lies. Erica had me sign it and send it certified. The fee was $425, which felt worth it. Sabrina received it and went cold. She didn't cry or apologize. She tried a different tactic. She started acting sweet in front of others. At a lakeside lantern festival near the lakefront, she smiled widely. She held my arm like we were fine. When Nina walked up, Sabrina squeezed harder. It felt like a performance grip. Nina looked between us, her eyes narrowed. Sabrina said, "We're working on things." I said, "We're handling it privately." Sabrina's smile twitched. She said, "He gets intense." Nina didn't laugh. She said, "That's not how I'd describe him." That moment mattered. It showed me the lie wasn't landing cleanly. 2 days later, I got another email from Mr. Patel. The subject line was Key Fob Deactivation Inquiry. Sabrina had asked to deactivate my fob. She wanted to lock me out without a lock change. Mr. Patel asked for my written confirmation. I replied, "I do not authorize deactivation." Then I forwarded the email to Erica. I didn't add commentary, just the facts. Erica responded with a short note. She said, "Good, keep the thread." Sabrina tried to escalate in the loft. She moved my clothes into a plastic bin. She placed the bin near the door like a hint. She set my blue key fob on top of it. I picked up the key fob calmly. I clipped it back to my strap. Sabrina watched me and scoffed. She said, "You can't take a hint." I said, "We can't rewrite the lease." She said, "We can rewrite your reputation." I swallowed hard. That sentence told me everything. That night I slept on the couch. I placed my thermos on the floor beside me. In the morning I created a moving inventory list. I did not share it, but I needed it. I priced a storage unit in Bayview. It was $110 a month, plus a $29 admin fee. I also started applying for Portland apartments. Pearl District options were expensive. One place offered $16.90 rent and a $16.90 deposit. I didn't sign anything yet. I was still in Milwaukee, still on the lease. I refused to be pushed into homelessness. Sabrina wanted me gone so she could sublet. I was sure now. She had been texting her cousin about moving in soon. I saw the message flash on her screen by accident. I didn't grab her phone. I didn't accuse her on the spot. I just added one more boundary. No more shared devices, no more shared accounts. I switched my direct deposit at work. My paycheck was $19.20 every Friday after taxes. I moved my portion of rent into a separate account. I left a clear paper trail. When rent was due, I paid my share directly. The memo line stayed the same every time. Harbor Line Lofts rent Caleb. Boring, consistent, undeniable. The showdown came in the leasing office. Mr. Patel asked us to meet in person. Sabrina arrived in a bright coat, smiling. I arrived with a folder and my thermos. Mr. Patel shut the door gently. He spoke like a man who hated drama. He said, "We need clarity on occupancy." Sabrina said, "He's leaving." I said, "I'm not leaving without agreement." Sabrina said, "He's scaring me." Mr. Patel looked at her carefully. He said, "Do you have a police report?" Sabrina's cheeks flushed. She said, "No, I don't need one." I kept my voice steady. I said, "We can communicate in writing." Sabrina leaned forward. She said, "He's trying to trap me." I said, "I'm trying to follow the contract." Mr. Patel said, "Contract rules are clear." Mr. Patel offered 2 options, a mutual release with the $12.50 fee, or a formal roommate addendum with full screening. Sabrina wanted neither. She wanted option 3, which did not exist. Erase me, keep the deposit, and keep the story. I said my piece without extra heat. I said, "I'll sign a mutual release." Sabrina snapped at me. She said, "You can't afford the fee." I looked at her, then at Mr. Patel. I said, "I can." That was the moment she realized I had planned. Not revenge, just readiness. I had already booked a storage unit. I had already lined up a short-term rental. I had already accepted the Portland offer. Start date was 5 weeks away. Sabrina's eyes darted to my folder. She tried a softer voice. She said, "We can talk at home." I said, "We're talking here." Mr. Patel asked for signatures. I signed the mutual release. Sabrina hesitated. Her pen hovered like she wanted a different ending. She signed anyway. She couldn't sublet without freedom. The lease release processed in 3 business days. I paid my half of the break fee, $625. Sabrina owed the other $625. She complained to anyone who listened. I didn't respond. I kept moving forward. In the weeks before my move, the rumors started to collapse, not from my anger but from her own contradictions. Nina called me from a quiet corner of Milwaukee Public Market. Her voice sounded tired. She said, "Sabrina keeps changing the story." I said, "I'm sorry you got dragged in." Nina asked one direct question. She said, "Did you ever lock her out?" I held my blue key fob in my hand. I said, "No, management can confirm." Nina exhaled. She said, "That's what I thought." Later that day, Nina texted me an apology. Not dramatic, just honest. Sabrina also got a message from Erica's office. It reminded her of the retraction request. Sabrina didn't publish a grand statement. She just stopped repeating the worst claims. Silence spread faster than gossip. People grew bored when there was no new fuel. I moved out on a cold morning with a rented van. The van cost $89 plus 0.89 per mile. I carried boxes down the stairs without speaking. My thermos sat on the kitchen counter until the end. Before I left, I looked around the loft once. I didn't miss the concrete floor. I clipped my blue key fob off my strap. I dropped it in Mr. Patel's office mailbox. I sent one final email to management. The subject line was, "Key fob returned and final walkthrough." Mr. Patel replied within an hour. He thanked me for being respectful. Sabrina watched the empty doorway from inside. She did not follow me out. I drove west with the radio low. I stopped in Madison for gas, 46.20. I didn't romanticize the trip. I just let the distance do its work. Portland felt damp and new. I rented a place off Alberta Street. My first day at Cascade Safe Logistics was simple. New badge, new desk, new expectations. The salary hit my account 2 weeks later. Seeing $32.30 deposited felt unreal. I built my routine again. Morning walk, coffee, then work. I brought my dented thermos to every meeting. It reminded me I was still me. At work, I had a real win by month 3. A forklift incident rate was too high. I changed training and signage. Incidents dropped from 6 a month to 1. My director emailed me praise. I saved it, then kept working. I set a financial milestone that made me proud. I wanted $20K saved within 12 months. Between the raise and the bonus, I hit it. I stared at the number and laughed quietly. Back in Milwaukee, Sabrina's consequences kept appearing. Her part of the break fee hit her hard. She asked friends for loans. Some refused politely. A few of them asked why the story kept shifting. Sabrina got defensive. Nina told me later, gently. She said, "People notice the patterns." I didn't celebrate that. I just felt lighter. Sabrina tried to return once I was stable. She sent a long email at midnight. She wrote about stress and fear. She wrote about misunderstandings. I read it at lunch the next day. I kept my reply short. I wrote, "Please keep communication to practical matters." Then I stopped. A year after the lease release, I was thriving. I had a good job, a calm home, and quiet weekends. I walked Forest Park one Saturday morning. Rain tapped the leaves like soft percussion. I opened my old folder on my laptop later. I wanted closure, not revenge. 3 lines still said everything. Clean and plain, email subject. Request to remove co-tenant, email subject. Key fob deactivation inquiry, email subject. Key fob returned and final walkthrough that evening. Sabrina sent a final message. It sounded different this time. She wrote, "I'm sorry I lied about you." She wrote, "I was scared about money." She wrote, "I wanted the loft to myself." She wrote, "You didn't deserve that." I didn't punish her with words. I answered with one sentence. I wrote, "I accept this and I wish you well." Then I closed my laptop and washed my thermos. Warm water ran over dents and fingerprints. I learned a lesson I carry everywhere now. If someone needs you to be the villain, step back. My boundary rule is simple and strict. Anything shared on paper stays shared on paper. If I could do one thing differently, I'd speak sooner. I waited, hoping kindness would change her plan. The blue key fob is gone, and that's fine. The calm it bought me is still here.